Callie, you're the intro queen. Today we're here with Callie Hinson. You may know her from the Leaderist podcast.
This podcast and this conversation.
Conversation.
Lexi, so good to see you.
So good to see you too. Long time no see. We just got back from a full week together.
Yeah.
In Austin, yeah.
And we didn't get divorced. So
no, we
that's
didn't. Good. We survived.
Yeah. We had a good training there. But Lexi recommended, we were just rapping before we started recording, and Lexi said, hey, we need to record this because it's the genuine thoughts that have been occurring recently. Man, we're in hard times. These are hard times. And I'm not even on the street. And I feel like my character is being assaulted on a daily basis. And my morale is extremely low. I was just telling you that having gone to a training this morning, I had someone come up to me in the parking lot at the beginning of training and tell me that I should leave the department. And then someone at the end of the training, at the very end of the day. So I started my day and I ended my day with two very seasoned 20 plus year officers saying, look, you've got 5 years on, you need to get out quick because this department and this career does not have your back. So these are hard times. I can't imagine, if I was in another career field, like my husband going to an engineering job and someone telling him, hey, you need to get the hell out because this country, this job environment, they don't have your back. And if you fuck up something mechanically, engineerily speaking, you're going to get fired and you might go to jail. Like, oh my Lord.
It sounds like you have a very vast knowledge of what your husband does.
Have you been talking to him? Because that's exactly what I didn't ever claim to know what he does for work, but that's neither here nor there. So Lexi, I need you to pull me out of the depths. I've been looking at a book, Lincoln on leadership, and going through the chapter on how it's specifically called have the courage to handle unjust criticism. And it talks about his experience with unjust criticism. Obviously, he came into office in a very tumultuous time. So, yeah. Anywho.
Well, I've had kind of similar frustrations, but I wouldn't say from, so I am on the street and I'm lucky enough to be in a squad with people who are for the most part still happy to come to work and a leadership that is still optimistic. And I know 100% my direct leadership would have my back as long as I'm acting, within policy procedure and just ethically, right? So it's kind of weird because where the pressure for me is coming is like things I listen to, or, I'll hear people say things like, who would want to be a cop? Every cop should leave, all this stuff. And I think, am I crazy? Because I still love my job and I still like being out there. And, so it's a weird kind of dichotomy for me is like, yeah, I get it. It's tough, but I'm not ready to give up. So it's a weird feeling.
Yeah. And I get that. And I understand, like, it is such an awesome job, so rewarding. And you feel like you've really accomplished something in your day, but every cop who has been in the news felt like that up until the day of whatever incident that happened. Right. And so I guess, my nature, as you know, is extremely pessimistic. Yours is pretty optimistic, I'd say. And sometimes we switch roles and we have to pull each other up. But yeah, I mean, I think my mind is always on the day that I go in and all of that is erased. Everything that happened up until that point, all of the good, all of the passion and the love for the job is all just taken away and my name gets smeared through the whatever, because I made a decision in a split second and it was a lawful decision. It was within policy, et cetera, but the way it has been interpreted, by media and things like that is very poorly received. And so it's like,
well, and I do think that for every one we see, there's probably another 10 that has happened that haven't reached that level for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. I think it was just, the most recent one was just kind of right time, right place, right emotional heartstrings, and so I think it's tough. I mean, all you can be is optimistic, like hopefully that it won't happen, but if it does, that you're like emotionally ready for whatever happens and you can defend the decisions you make based on your training, and that's why you and I train so much, right? That's why we really advocate for officers to make sure that they aren't just letting the days pass by and relying on their departments to give them everything, because they're not going to, but at the end of the day, you're the individual that's being judged. So you better make sure that your training is on point and that your decision making is on point and that you can justify what you've done at the end of the day. And we're, unfortunately, in our career, we're asked to do some things that are super tragic. Like I am sure that officer is dealing with a lot of emotional stuff, having to, shoot a young person in the middle of all this stuff. Like nobody wants to do that. Not a single person who gets on the job wants to do that. And I'm sure this makes it just that much harder. But yeah, it's a tough time, I think, for law enforcement in general. And at the end of the day, like, I just feel like somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. And that's where my mind goes, is like, if no human can really make a mistake in this job, is what it feels like right now, make a mistake, or like, even, just like you referenced, make a difficult decision. It wasn't a mistake necessarily. It was a conscious decision to stop a threat. Who's going to do that? Who's going to step up and make that difficult decision? And it goes back to your original question, which is like, why people always ask us, like, who would want to be a police officer right now? And I ask myself that question too sometimes. Like, my emotions are as entangled in everything that's going on as anybody else's. And it's like, I have to reach out and seek mentors and people like that to talk to really like field out what it is. And you, I mean, you're one of my mentors that I have to reach out and keep me grounded in terms of like, why it is we put one foot in front of the other. So.
Yeah, for me, like, it's just like, I have not found, and I think we've had this conversation, I have not found another career that I enjoy the same way that I enjoy this, and that I'm more like, my personality is more suited for, like, it's just, I get to talk to all sorts of people all the time. I get to, work on teams. I get to work individually. I get to, problem solve. I can run fast after people sometimes. I can, look for, I don't know. It's just like, there's really nothing else I can think of that would suit my personality as this career does, and, I like to think that it won't happen to me, these things, but it could. And I just have to be prepared and, hopefully make as many good relationships with people I meet along the way that would stand up in those circumstances and say, oh, no. You're not going to paint this woman like that.
Yeah. And that's just it, is that you have to trust your training, trust your heart and your instinct when you're making decisions, and, know that you're out there as a protector, and, move through the career with that mindset. And, I mean, that maintaining that perspective, I think is key. And I think, a lot of kind of what I do is I'm talking with people that are just about to start the academy, or they're getting to start their FTO rotations too. And, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you don't want to, I mean, I want to really highlight that, and I want to be excited for them, and I want to propel that. I want to, inflate that, and I don't want to take away from their excitement or anything like that with any of my concerns. So,
well, I mean, and think about when we came on, a ton of people would tell us, you can't police the way you used to, but I don't think either of you or I feel like we're limited, or, like,
no,
we can still
the coolest, most exciting, fun, like, like, you're just, it's still police work. It's still catching bad people, or helping out innocent people, which is like extremely exciting, extremely rewarding. So,
yeah. And I think too, just like you get to know, like even people you arrest that may have done a bad thing, but you start talking to them and you're like, okay, I can see like the potential in this person, or like they're struggling with this or that. Like, I just think that that's a cool side of human
Yeah.
nature that a lot of people don't get to see.
Yeah.
You know, and I think law enforcement is still important to hold people accountable for those bad decisions, and, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully give them something to make a decision. Okay, do I want to keep going down this path, or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
I love having those conversations with people about how they grew up, their history, what their interests are, you know, just I love having those conversations. And then you get to say the person that's like, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you, and call you every name in the book until you finally arrive at whatever destination, wherever you're transporting them. You're like, God, I regret even trying to like talk to this person. And they're like, I'm coming to your house, God damn it. And you're like, oh God, please don't.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I'll have tea ready for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Okay,
crumpets.
cool. We'll talk there, I guess. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been struggling with, and it always goes in waves. You know, I think one of the things that, and this is an important component of wellness too, that is important to keep in mind, is, you know, fatigue has a huge impact on patience and resilience. And I guess I don't feel super resilient, you know, when I'm tired, that kind of thing. Like I don't have the mental fortitude to I do think it takes energy and mental fortitude to avoid even like media, or to read it and sort of just not let it kind of penetrate whatever mindset you have that day.
Yeah.
And so that's when I think that's, you know, when you look at officers who've been working every day and then they're also in this loop of media stuff, I mean, you know, you can see how the stresses from the job, the lack of sleep, the stresses at home, and then kind of ingesting this media stuff, it just feeds into an awful state of depression and low morale.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, social media has got, if you're completely consumed by it, you feel a difference. I'm right now, I have to stay home because my fiance got COVID, and I'm trying to avoid him and avoid getting sick, but I can't go to work until I know that I didn't get it. So I'm kind of, you know, I'm working remotely, but I'm also on, you know, listening to stuff, to media, and on my phone and stuff. And I can feel a difference when I do that versus when I'm at work and actually engaged in real life,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, going for a run or whatever it may be. Like, you know, you feel the difference in your head space. And I think, you know, hopefully officers that listen to this can really take that to heart and, you know, get off their phones, interact with real people on the job, talk to your community. Because, you know, just for as many loud voices are saying they don't want us around, there's a large majority that do and are willing to sit down and talk to you, and maybe even aren't sure, but, you know, they're a fence sitter, but you could sit down and have a conversation with them and respect each other. And I think that that's worth doing. And I think just for wellness and personal longevity, having those conversations is going to get you over that hump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that you reference that, because in this book that I'm reading, and the chapter that was particularly about unjust criticism, Lincoln, I guess his biggest thing was just try to avoid reading that stuff, because he was so busy and so productive that it just pulled the energy from him, because he was as susceptible to sort of getting frustrated and having certain emotions about that negative stuff. And then one of the other things he said that kind of touches on what you just mentioned, was that, what did you just mention? I lost my train of thought.
To have conversations with real
That was it.
people.
Yeah. So he said, you know, there will be some times though where your character is attacked so much so in a way where you're almost left like internally with no choice but to refute it, and the best way to do that is in person, in a conversation. And nothing rings more true than in a world of, you know, internet back and forth, like trolling and that kind of thing. and to seek that one-on-one conversation. And none of this is like super novel. I mean, lots of people have talked about this before, but it just is a good reminder that like nothing's really like changed. It's not, human nature is still such that it's much easier to cast this criticism from behind a papyrus, I don't know, back thousands of years ago, versus, it's akin to whatever. And, being able to tell someone to their face something, or even engage, you're much more likely to engage in a civil conversation than you are to just throw insults just upon immediate, one-on-one interaction,
I doubt that any minds are changed on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just get in your lane and you just dig in, I can't see that anybody would change their mind. It's like a gotcha platform.
I have not been on Twitter. You know what? I haven't been on Twitter in for forever. I think like I have a Twitter account and it still exists, but yeah, I don't miss that. I just don't have that. I don't have as much of a binary on off switch as you do, where you're like, I can avoid this, I can avoid this, and I'm like get sucked into it and then it ruins my day.
Yeah, I don't have Twitter either. The only thing I have is like Instagram, but well, I have other things. I just am not active on them. But
TikTok, Snapchat.
I enjoy that through my stepdaughters. I don't actually have it, but yeah, I mean, it just sucks you in, and you can tell, or even watching TV for a long period of time, you can tell your brain is just like, feels like gross,
It's it's like junk food. It's like while you're getting like a spike of adrenaline while it's happening. And then after a while you're like, I feel sick. I'm a sick person now. Yeah. That used to always bother me. And that brings me to another point too. Like, I was in the gym, one of the gym locations, and it reminded me of, even when I was on patrol, how in the break room, it would just be through the night, it would just be a news channel the entire night long. And unless somebody like proactively went up and changed it. And I'm like, this is literally the last thing we need on a loop all day long. And it was the same thing in the gym. And I can't help but think that there is a certain group of people or a certain personality that is somehow fucking jazzed on that. Like, even if they disagree with it, if they can't get enough of it, but they hate everything that's going on, and I don't know why, but it gives them a sense of like angst or something, or
I think some people are addicted to outrage,
Yeah. Yes.
I feel like that's the name of a book somewhere.
Addicted to outrage. It's not. It is now.
I hope I'm not plagiarizing something. But yeah, I think there's certainly an addiction to that feeling of just being mad at everybody, and or like feeling like a victim. Because as much as cops are like, oh, those people want to act like victims all the time, we do it absolutely the most, like
all the time.
Yeah, and it drives me nuts. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, well, I mean, I had to, like, when I was in the gym, there was like one other dude in there, and I didn't even ask him. I just turned it off because I literally couldn't take it. There's 2 TVs. I'm like, one of these has got to go off. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's funny, my dad would say it about cops, and he's like, cops and Marines, if they're not bitching, they're not happy, or something along those lines. But it's there's some truth to that. I think it's just a very benign way of venting and getting out a lot of, like, there's a lot of stress that goes on in our jobs and our lives, and it's a very like benign way to just sort of, well, we don't, there's not enough paper towels in here, and I've been looking for paper towels for 10 years. And you're like, it's not about the paper towels. Like, you need a day off, you know? Yeah.
My favorite people on the department that I think are just some of the most like amazing cops, like super moral people, and just are ones that would call me on it when I started, like do the like, oh, did you hear? And this person got messed up because of this. And they would say like, well, they had the option to do this and this, and just sort of call me on that, like jumping to conclusions. And make me like back up a second and say, okay, you're right. Like
Yeah.
there's more than one way to think about this. And, you know, and I appreciate people like that in my life. I don't want to be like, I don't want people to feed into the negativity. I want people to snap me out of it, kind of, you know, or give me another perspective, or even if I don't agree with it, just give me something to not just like roll into that feeling.
That's such a good point, because when I was at training today, there were a few people bitching about, brass decisions, things like that, just people in the chain of command being out of touch and yada, yada, and how the decisions they were making were terrible and all this. And, a sergeant who I don't know chimed in and just said, like, look, you guys probably don't have the slightest idea. He worked in a unit that worked closely with brass and the higher ups, and he's like, you guys probably don't have the slightest idea of how those decisions are really being made, and what kind of pressure and what kind of how they negotiated even to that decision, what the the first presentation of whatever it is was, and how they were able to negotiate to a better decision. So anyway, I respected him a lot for bringing that up, especially when it's so much easier just to sit back and say, yeah, these fucking a-holes in their ivory tower or whatever. So yeah.
Well, it's all where you're sitting, right? Like you think about the cop who says like, well, those citizens have no idea. They've never had to like respond to a call and see this and see that. And then, that same cop is like, those freaking brass, they don't get it. And then the brass is like, well, they don't know what I have to sit through and who I have to like, who I'm accountable to and who I'm trying to like balance and everything so that everything, ends up okay. So you just have to have compassion for, I have compassion for people who are screaming for us to have our jobs taken away, because I think they have like a legitimate feeling that, and that I think they have a distorted view of what goes on. But I think they actually feel it. I don't think it's disingenuous. And I feel bad that they feel that way, because I wish they would just have the ability to come and talk to us and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine living in that headspace where you feel like everything's so stacked against you that you could just be minding your own business and get shot by a cop. Like that, to me, like, I'd hate to live in that headspace.
Yeah, if that's your reality, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, where can we find the bridge where we can start talking to each other, or dispelling that myth, or, just trying to get past it, or heal that, or make them feel safe, because at the end of the day, our job is to make people feel safe,
Do you have compassion for the person that's like, defund the police? Do you have compassion for the person that's like, hey, why don't you take your gun out and shoot yourself in the head and do us all a favor?
No, and I think
you've heard that, right? And I've heard that.
And I think there's a difference of I think there's a certain amount of people, and really I think the people that are kind of left in where we work doing this, they're not genuine. I don't think that any of those people go out and feel unsafe. I think that they have different agendas, and I think they're the kid that is constantly poking in to see what they can get away with. But I don't think that they genuinely have those fears and those beliefs. But there are people in this nation that I do think genuinely have those. So I'd like to distinguish those two.
Yeah. That's a huge distraction from, the bigger conversation, I feel like. Yeah, that's what an officer told me today. I've been asked so many times to take my gun out and shoot myself in the head. And, if by the 1,000th time, I wonder if I'll actually do it. And it's just like one more time, and I just might. And
the sick thing is that the crowd we deal with would cheer that.
They would absolutely. It's just the most sad thing I've ever heard, because there's truth to what that person's saying. Like, they're essentially telling me, like, I can't take any person who, goes into their job and they have to hear people come up to their desk and say, hey, why don't you do everyone a favor and kill yourself? It will wear on you, even if it's not personal or whatever. It's just awful.
And you imagine your husband in his engineering job and
yeah,
doing his numbers, making his engines.
He's doing engineering things, and someone says,
and somebody every day just comes up and whispers, hey, why don't you do us a favor? I mean, think about the HR, think about like what that would do, and how just inappropriate it is in that context.
It's it's inappropriate in any context, if you ask me. It's just but
because people are exercising their First Amendment right, we have to deal with it because we uphold the Constitution, right? And so we have to sit there and just listen, and hopefully it doesn't affect us too much, which is hard. It's hard.
That's the big, and that's the big thing. And it's like, I was talking to you about this earlier today. I've seen our department grapple with how to really change that culture of wellness. And I feel like we have good resources for it, but I still feel like people are like, what the hell, like wellness, what the hell, like, I don't have time for that. And like, this is like such a fluffy organization. Like that's a fluffy unit type thing. And, in speaking with some folks that just graduated the academy who are about to go out on the street, the way I conveyed it to them was that, yeah, you may not think you need these resources. You may, and that's good news. Maybe it means that something is improving in the culture if you don't ever have to seek out like some of the resources we have. But you are stepping into a career that is, like you said, so high stakes, and now is such high scrutiny. Mm-hmm. You cannot afford, just like you cannot afford not to go to the range and practice shooting, or not to keep up your physical fitness, or not to understand the laws, the code in which you work or your policies. You also cannot afford to disregard a whole component of mental health, go out there, be frustrated, make a bad decision, say something jacked up to someone, and then basically take us all back 10 steps because you weren't able to take care of yourself. And maybe that's a harsh way of phrasing it, but I almost feel like if you can look at wellness as a responsibility to the people around you and to the career field in and of itself, like the community demands you make these decisions with a clear mind and, all of these components that go into wellness, sleep and nutrition, all that stuff. And so if for no other reason than to just not make us all look bad because you're so stressed out,
Yeah. I'm about to say something and you can quote me.
Drop it. I'm going to get my pen ready.
Get your pen. Like if you can't recognize your own humanity, like how the hell are you going to recognize anybody else's?
Ooh, girl. Okay. I got it. That's so true.
And I think that, the thing that set us back so far is a very, very good, example of that. I think Derek Chauvin forgot his own humanity. And he didn't see he didn't see the humanity in George Floyd.
Yeah.
So he didn't make a good decision, and he made an ego-based decision. And, that's not what we should strive to be so much better than that.
Yeah. Yep. That's so true. And part of that is when you're talking about recognizing your own humanity is recognizing your own fragility.
Yes.
And knowing where your threshold is. And once you see that, be it physical or mental health wise or whatever, you're much more apt to recognize that in other people too. You're yes. finely tuned to those human, whatever instincts or, cues. So I think that's a really, really exceptional point. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. I think some of the best officers I know, and, I would put myself, and not that I'm the best officer I know, but just put myself in the same categories, like, growing up with people that weren't always on the straight and narrow, or maybe you weren't always on the straight and narrow yourself, but, you know, you found your way to the career and, you know, but having had those relationships prior to the career, knowing that, you know, but for a fork in the road, that could have been me in the back of the car, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have friends that contact me and like, hey, so-and-so got in trouble. Here's what's going on. You know, what can I do? You know, that gives me a sense of humanity for those people because, you know, I know and love my friends and, you know, maybe they make some bad decisions, but they're not bad people. And I think that that's helpful in the career, just of having that kind of overall view of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I know we have talked about, but I don't think is discussed enough, is that part of the difficulty in tapping into that humanity, and it's possible for sure, but there are certain situations that the risk is so high that your main job is to control things, and that includes your emotion. And
Mm-hmm.
so the emotion is a luxury at that point. You are on a you're on a task oriented sort of timeline, and you don't there are situations where you have to be in full control of your emotions. And so I think it becomes, when you base all of your training and things like that on the highest stress situations, you tend to kind of default to that in a lot of situations because you don't want to be caught off guard. You want to make sure you're vigilant and that your emotions are not influencing your decisions or your actions or your effectiveness or anything. So that's where it's hard for police officers, because we're expected to be like I feel like complete robots in some situations, like, and then in other situations like therapists. And
Yeah.
it's like this spectrum that we have is just so broad and so reaching that that's when I start to get in that loop of like, no one can be good at this job.
Yeah.
I
Well,
I will fail.
Oh yeah. And I think that's where I'd say, going back to something we talk about a lot, is like training martial arts and competing on some level in martial arts is super applicable to that change, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember the martial art I did for like 14 years, I would notice that it seemed to be the case that if girls got into like a heated thing, they would be very I'm totally generalizing, but sort of like, F that B, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking to her, but dudes would just be able to kind of shake hands and,
Mm-hmm.
all right, you punch me in the face, but hey, good game.
Yeah.
Totally generalizing it because it's not that way all the time. But I strive to be like the second of, you know what, you got the better of me this time. Shake hands until next time.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that for lack of a better way to put this, but being able to be in one moment being punched in the face or kicked or whatever, and having that go, and then in the next moment shaking a hand and saying, all right, until next time, type of thing. I think
Mm-hmm.
that mental switch is super applicable to what we have to do in law enforcement, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
might have to fight for your life in 1 second, and once you get the person under control, they all of a sudden become apologetic and want to tell you about their life. I mean, you have to be able to,
Yeah, and not take it too far and like feel like, hey, like I need to own this person now because they tried to take my life. Like that's not what it's about.
Like F that B.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's and then that's when you end up seeing videos of people just losing control and doing a force that's maybe not justified in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, but I think what we're doing right now, talking this all out, and what, hopefully our podcast brings people, is just a glimmer of hope that, if you take onus on yourself to train and, do everything you can so that you're protected when you have to make those split-second decisions, you're not making fatal errors. You're protecting the community, you're protecting the people we work with. At the end of the day, like, that's all we can do, and then recognizing our own humanity and everybody else's. I don't know.
Yeah. Are you burping or are you about to cry?
No, I was burping.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for pointing that out.
I mean, both, you could be doing both simultaneously too.
No, I was just trying to hold back a burp so I'd be polite, but thank you.
It tripped up. What else has been on your mind lately? That's what's been on my mind. But
Oh yeah. I don't know how it couldn't be. I mean, again, I listen to a lot of different podcasts and stuff, and I've heard cops are quitting. You know, why would you be a cop? Cops should leave, teach them a lesson, whatever it might be. I don't know. It's, or, you know, cops are all bad.
Who's gonna do the job?
I don't know.
Who's gonna do the job? There's no one gonna come in and save people. And the people that are in the job now are already they feel like their hands are already so tied. You know, I mean, yeah, I don't want to we don't have to go start the whole conversation ever again, but it's just, that's the thing is, you know, you keep encouraging people to leave the job or end their life or whatever. And then what are you left with? I was talking to someone about this recently. There are people out there who terrible things have never happened to them. And thank goodness. I'm so glad to hear that. But there are people where terrible things have happened to them and the police have had to intervene. And the police deal with that stuff on a daily and nightly basis. And there is a vast majority, though, of civilian people who go through their lives and luckily will never have to deal with a robbery at gunpoint or with brute force or something like that. They'll never have to deal with being hijacked carjacked. They're never going to have to deal with domestic violence or, a myriad of all these things. And they don't understand that that's what we do all day, is come to the response of people who need. It's just how is that message not a thing?
Yeah. And just, I think if I could stress for just people who aren't cops that just have to think about, when we come to people on their worst day, we plug whatever hole is in front of us, whether literally or metaphorically. And then we don't really hear from that person again, unless they're just like a regular on our beat. Like, I mean, I always think back to my team responded to a shots call. Someone had been shot in the chest, and we plugged his hole. Literally, we, put a chest seal on his chest, and fire wouldn't come in because they won't come in until the scene is safe. But he wasn't able to talk to me until we put that chest seal on, and then all of a sudden there's this big breath, and he could talk to me again. And I just think about that, like, we saved his life. We saved his life, and that's really cool. I have no idea where that kid is. I have no idea if I have nothing. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But, and just like, or the person you see every day on the street that's homeless and addicted to drugs, and you're encouraging them to get better, and, hey, what can I do? Oh, I'm waiting for housing, whatever. And then all of a sudden they disappear from the street, and you're just hoping, like, I hope they're good, but they could also be dead from an overdose, and it's just that I think psychological toll is hard on cops too. Is there's just like, we get to deal with that momentary crisis or ongoing crisis, and once it's over, you just don't know. You have to make up stories,
Yeah.
Or hope that one day you see someone again and they tell you, hey, like, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't know. It's wild. Yeah, I mean, I think we should probably dedicate an episode. It would be fun to go back and talk about like some of those significant calls, because it just brings me, when I was on that podcast recently and they were asking me, have you saved anyone's life ever? And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, all I can think about is like CPR when I think of save someone's life, but I've gone through 4 tourniquets, I've gone, like nothing like, I don't know if I saved those people's life. I just did what I was supposed to do and, hope that intervened when someone's getting their ass beat by their boyfriend or something like that. Like, I don't know how far this would have gone if I hadn't, so it's a difficult thing, but I just feel like, we've talked about this before too. Like, that's just the job. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like, I feel like it's like, I feel an honor to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but how freaking cool is it that we can say, like, I don't know if maybe they would have lived if we weren't there, but you know what? Like, we ran into the danger and we slapped on those chest seals, tourniquets, whatever. And how cool is that job? I mean, that's,
pretty cool. Pretty cool. I already feel a little bit better talking to you.
Good, good. Now you just need a glass of wine and a bath and you'll be all good.
Girl, I do. Maybe a beer and a bath, a bee and a bee.
A bee and a bee.
What?
Nothing. Just, I'm good.
Okay, look. We're going to leave it there. Anything else?
No, I think, I think for those of you that listen to us, and I'm guessing if you're in law enforcement, you're feeling the same. If you're not, you're looking at how everything is and just feeling a little, I don't know, just what do you believe and what do you think? But let's keep these conversations going and, keep talking to people and being willing to have our minds changed on certain things. That takes a lot of courage and, take a deep breath, stay off the tweets.
Stay off the internet altogether. No more Amazon. No more like Netflix. Just abstain from the internet. Okay, that is extreme, but definitely like being off Instagram for a long time was a cleansing experience. And I still don't really go on except for like work type stuff. But yeah, highly recommend it. It's just, you gotta, it's like junk food, you can only handle so much before it makes you diabetic. And I have media diabetes.
Nice try.
There's something in there. All right.
Keep working on that.
Yeah. Good conversation.
Yeah. All right, Callie.
All right, Lexi.